Today on Amara Woman Magazine, the presidential candidates are already making their trek to South Carolina for its first in the South primary. But with 22 presidential candidates so far in the race, will voter fatigue keep South Carolinians away from the polls? And gun control is sure to be an important issue this election cycle. Many feel it's too easy to get a gun in America. We'll weigh in with our opinions. And we've got information to keep your identity safe and keep you from getting scammed. Plus, Christian comedian Mike Goodwin is headlining Amara's Empowerment Tour, and he'll give you just a taste of what's in store. So stay where you are. Amara Woman Magazine starts now. Well, you know, it's hard to believe that we are already being besieged, really, with presidential candidates. South Carolina's first in the South primary for presidential season in 2016. And they're like, everybody's running there. 17 on the Republican side so far, 5 on the Democratic side so far. Are there just too many candidates, or is it just me?
every week.
I know.
Different candidates, sometimes 2 or 3 a week.
Yeah.
So as we get closer, get into January after Iowa and New Hampshire, it'll be all of them here.
Yeah.
Through our primary.
A good number of them have come through here, though, particularly on the Republican side. And Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, they have been here a number of times on the Democratic side. Joe Biden has too, even though he says he's not running right now. So I don't know.
We'll see. It's kind of late in the game to be jumping in, but very crowded field.
But, I mean, what do y'all think? I mean, is that too much? I mean, we'll have candidate fatigue.
Well, I don't think so. I like the dialogue.
Really?
I, for the first time, watched the entire Republican debate
What?
for 2 hours. Oh, absolutely. It was the Donald Trump show.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I think it was so interesting, so interesting. I think sometimes that the Democratic Party might have led Donald to join the Republicans, and because everything is about Donald Trump. They are not really touching on any of the issues because everything, all the after talk after the debate was all about Donald Trump.
Yeah. And his numbers are still high.
And his numbers are still high. And, you know, I think as time goes on, as we go through the different primaries, though, they'll be sifting out. I mean, you know, it's not going to be 17, you know, probably, what do you think, Don? You know, in a few months?
Well, it's a lot of real estate between now and then, and, you know, having been very active in the last 2 GOP presidential primaries here in South Carolina, it's just not enough oxygen and not enough money, quite frankly, to sustain everybody. You know, and I don't think that now is necessarily the time that you want to be peaking as a candidate. The landscape can look very different from the time, you know, when we get to February. I mean, I think back to 4 years ago in the summer, right before we voted, and, you know, Newt Gingrich was a joke. You know, everybody said he doesn't have a prayer, and by the time we voted in January, he won the state by double digits. So there's a lot that can happen between now and then, but I think it's great for our state. Great exposure on the now is very good for our economy.
Well, that's true, yeah, because a lot of business will thrive as a result of just the attention from the media. But I just wonder, you know, you don't seem to think that people will just get sick and tired of hearing about, you know, coming in and then all
I think
the
they're going to get a little sick and tired of Donald Trump. I think he's going to have a ride for a little while because, I mean, who has he not offended? I mean, yes. First it started, I guess, with the immigration thing with Mexicans, and then he went now to Megyn Kelly, you know, with that thing. But I think he got a bad shake on that Megyn Kelly thing.
A lot of people
A little bit.
I think so. I don't think when he was talking about blood coming out of our eyes or somewhere else, I don't think it was necessarily referring to hormonal.
I don't think
I think it was more like, you know, blood coming out of eyes, or, you know, normally normally blood doesn't come out of someone's eyes.
Yeah.
So maybe he was trying to think of a different body part.
Yeah.
And I think people kind of jumped on it.
Well,
I
that's
think
what
they
he
gave
said,
Donald.
that
Yeah,
they-
I kind of.
I mean,
think
he's
might have
very,
happened.
he's terrible. Because if he becomes the president, we're gonna go to war with everybody.
Yeah. He's very combative. You're right.
Well, some people say that about several of the GOP candidates. You know, it's frustrating when I think it's become a little bit of a sideshow. When we do have some serious candidates that have great experience and a lot of good things to offer. That the real solutions and some of the real issues get lost in some of that rhetoric.
Yeah.
So hopefully, you know, we'll see a lot more talk about actual issues and the problems that our country is facing coming out in the next couple of months.
Well, if not, I think honestly people are just going to be so turned off by it that they just won't participate. The apathy will be even greater then. I mean, you got to think that back in 2008 and 2012, you can say what you will, but there was a lot of enthusiasm on both sides
Right.
of the aisle.
Oh yeah.
And I think it was orchestrated in a way because you had the Obama-Clinton competition that went right down to the convention, you know, and then you had all the other stuff going on in the Republican Party, but you didn't have, you know, the number of candidates that we have. It's just
Right.
so
It's a lot.
many of them. I mean, I just think that for most people who try to be informed, that's a lot to try to get informed about to make an intelligent decision. So as a result, the crazier you act and the more media attention you get, then the more likelihood you are going to tap into something, frustration that exists between the voters. And that's not really the best way to pick a president.
Right.
But that's what's happening now. I mean, even on the Democratic side, you see the candidates harping about what Donald Trump said.
Right.
You know, I mean, who cares what he says, you know? I don't understand.
And he's loving it. He
Every
is
minute of it,
absolutely
because
loving
poll
it.
numbers are going up,
Oh,
and,
sure.
you know.
He's speaking to someone. You laugh at him, but he's speaking
Well, he
to
clearly
some
is
people.
if he's
Yeah.
polling
Yeah.
that high. But I think the important thing to remember is, as South Carolinians, is how fortunate we are. I mean, you have an opportunity to meet the next president of the United States.
And most likely sit down in a place and talk with
Right.
them because they'll be here just
Absolutely.
that often.
Yeah.
So we
that's
have
true.
access that a lot of other folks in the country don't have, and I think that's good too. So
Yeah.
try to be informed, try to look past some of the show, and
Show is right. Show is right. But you know what? One of the things that I think is really to our credit as a state, you know, Iowa and New Hampshire are very, very much so white dominated states in terms of their voting population.
that's right. And we have
So
diversity.
when you come to South Carolina, you really get a better snapshot of what America
Absolutely.
really looks like because of the diversity of our voting population. So I think really for that reason, we are a better test of what could be a good candidate than some of the other two states.
Hold that thought, ladies. We'll be right back.
If I got to go to college, oh my goodness. I like discovering new things. You get to see what works for you and what doesn't. That helps you evolve as a person. You get to make like a supernova of skill or talent or whatever it is. I've always wanted to go to college. I just feel like that's my destiny. My name is Queen, and I am your dividend.
Every day we see news reports about gun violence in America. Do you think we have too many people having legal access to guns in
Yep,
America?
I do. I do. I mean, I know I'm probably in the minority with this, but I do. I think if you look at a lot of the crimes that have been committed, particularly lately, a lot of those folk got access to those guns in a legal way. Some of them, you say, oh well, you know, the Emmanuel 9 shooter would not have gotten a gun, but he did because according to the law they couldn't make him wait any longer. So as a result, he got the gun, and he didn't
well,
break any law.
there's something fell through the cracks with him that came out.
It fell through the cracks, that's true, but because the law is the way that it is, that did not say you have to wait until you get that report back, he was able to legally get a gun because his waiting period of, 72 hours, I can't remember what it was, had ran its course, and even though they did not have all that documentation back, he was able to, quote unquote, legally have access to that gun that he might not have otherwise gotten if that legal provision wasn't there. So, I mean, I think, we've got a love affair with guns. How many guns do you need? Some people have all kinds of guns. I mean, just all
Well,
kinds of
they
guns.
serve different, I mean, I'm sure y'all are going to be surprised where I stand on this subject, but I believe that the founders of our country had it right. I can own a gun, you can own a gun, we can.
All God's
Originally,
children
the
have a gun.
intent, the original intent was to be able to defend yourself against your country. And a lot of people forget about that, and they want to make it about hunting and this and that and the other. And there are different guns that you use for hunting versus, protection or
AK-47s
shooting.
and
Well, I mean, I
AK-15s.
think when you get into automatic weapons, there is an argument
Yeah.
to be made there.
And people are buying those, just like they would anything else. And then if you're selling if it's a private sale, it's pretty much, in most states, totally unregulated. And you don't really have to do anything to sell your neighbor a gun.
But if a criminal wants to get a gun, they'll find a way to get a gun.
Perhaps.
If you're
Because
already a
guns
criminal,
are so
you're not, you
guns
don't
are
have,
so readily available to everybody.
But do you think that's why they're, I think it's just the people, not everybody is going to use the gun to hurt people.
I mean,
do you
very
think that
few.
it's because it's so readily available, or maybe just some people are crazy?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think some people do have mental issues and probably should never, ever have a gun.
well, I agree with that.
But, how do we put in place stipulations to protect against that? If you can own a gun as a private gun owner and sell it to whomever. I mean, so you don't have a responsibility to verify anybody's mental status or even their criminal history. You can just sell your gun. And I just think that we've got to figure out some way to curtail the ease of getting weapons. And I kind of disagree with you that we had those guns to fight our government, but I understand the Revolutionary War, we were fighting.
I mean, that was a long time ago, but ultimately, and to have those guns to form a militia, which is what they did, which is why they're, the United States of America today. But obviously, it's evolved beyond that. But I am a very pro Second Amendment person.
So who shouldn't have a gun?
I think people with mental illness, I think the conversation has definitely been raised on that in the past couple of years. We look about what happened in Charleston, what happened in Connecticut. We talked about during the last show is you're going to go in and shoot up a movie theater. By the way, that's happened again now in Louisiana. So we definitely need to have a conversation about that, and I think a lot of our elected officials agree. I think the challenge is how do you do it in such a way that it doesn't become a witch hunt?
A witch hunt?
I mean, like we talked about some of the peers of the shooter saying that he was a little off, a little strange, in school a little bit. And we've heard that about many of these shooters. So, how can we protect against somebody just being able to say, well, I think that person was a little strange, they shouldn't be able to have a gun. I mean, obviously there needs to be more analysis beyond just an average everyday Joe trying to make an assertion.
Yeah.
Obviously you need a professional involved, but a lot of times until there's a problem.
Well, the NRA fights all those kinds of systems of checks and balances to make sure people are somewhat sane if they're going to get guns.
And the application process has to be just a little bit harder because
Yeah.
they ask, do you have a mental illness? Well, most people who have a mental
I'm not
illness,
crazy. Yeah, they don't think they do. Yeah.
they're fine.
Yeah, it's the
So they
world
check
that's not.
no.
It's the world that's
Right, exactly. So I understand your position because I mean there is a lot of how do you go too far, not go far enough,
Right,
and
yeah.
still have the people have the right to possess firearms. It's a sticky situation. I just don't know the answer.
I do think there is a responsibility as a gun owner for safety. I mean,
Yeah,
this past
sure.
Christmas, one of my gifts, and I asked for it, was a biometric gun safe, where it's a fingerprint.
Oh,
that
wow.
takes it to all.
And that's where I keep my pistol. And I have a lot of family members that have guns, and they have gun safes, and especially if you have children,
Absolutely.
to be able to lock that up. And and protect.
Well,
It's your responsibility.
We won't solve it today, but it's food for thought given all the types of gun violence we've had in the last few months. Well, listen, our next topic is a lot more pleasant. Actually, it's not. We're going to talk about being scammed. So if you want to prevent from being scammed, to protect yourself from the scam artists, then stay with us for our next segment. We'll be right back.
If you store your guns properly,
I'll feel safer when I'm playing outside.
Safer when walking home.
And I won't have to tell my kids, this isn't a drill.
Never let your gun get into the wrong hands. Always lock it up.
Welcome back. We are delighted to have in studio with us today Mr. Wallace Cunningham with AARP South Carolina. Wallace, welcome back.
Well, thank you, Wendy. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
Now, you are the AARP Multicultural Outreach Associate State Director. That's a mouthful.
Yes.
And I know that a lot of your work has been directly in communities, particularly in communities of color. So we commend you. I see you everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy.
Let's talk a little bit about the topic of the day, which is a really good one, and it's fraud. And you hear on the news every night so many people in America being taken advantage of by con artists, really. Millions of dollars, actually billions of dollars lost every year to fraud. What are you doing? I know AARP has a major program, but what are some of the types of fraudulent activities you're seeing out there as you move about in the communities?
Well, you're actually right, Wendy. There are a lot of fraudulent activities going on. Some of the most prevalent, the IRS scam.
Oh, yeah.
People are getting phone calls from folk that are saying that they're from the IRS, telling them that they owe money for several years, and if they don't send the money, that they're going to have them placed in jail. And we want folks to know that this is not how the IRS works. I mean, if there's an issue, the IRS will send a letter, a certified letter, and then, of course, follow up from there. But there are folks that have fallen victim to that scam.
And sent the money.
And sent the money. Another scam is what happens to folk when they're online. They may see a pop-up that says that their computer has a virus and they need to send X amount of dollars to get that virus fixed. And of course, one of the more heartbreaking scams is the grandparent scam. Somehow or another, folk are able to get enough information about a person's family, and then they will call them and say that your grandchild's in trouble and you need to send money. And people have done that. I was at a function earlier this year when it was shared with me that an individual got this phone call and sent $25,000.
Oh my goodness.
And
that's terrible.
of course, found out it was a scam and was about to send more money. And when the company that was wiring the money stopped and said, we need to take a look at this. And
that's how they found out?
That's how they found out.
Wow. So talk, those are horrible things. And we've even gotten a call. I've gotten that call at my house about the IRS scam. So that's interesting that you would bring that one up. What is AARP doing to help prevent some of this fraud that's taking place out there, protecting people?
Well, what we have this year, Wendy, we have the AARP Watchdog Alert program where we are informing people about the different kinds of frauds and scams that are going on and letting folk know, protect your personal information, your social security number, your date of birth, your bank account numbers. Check your credit reports. You get a free credit report annually. Go out and check it and make sure that all of those items on the credit report relate to things that the individual has done. We're working there so that folk don't become victimized by frauds and scams.
That's important too, because with more and more people using online services to make purchases, and so many times when even in South Carolina, when all of the social security numbers were basically stolen, and recently with the Veterans Administration, similar things, and IRS even had some of their data stolen. So it's really important, as you said, to take those extra precautionary measures. As you go about doing this fraud, protection service that AARP is offering. Are you finding that these con artists are focusing on just one type person, or is it more broad based? Are everyone's a target?
I think everyone's a target, Wendy. I've been at a number of functions. In fact, I was in Charleston last week, and people were telling me that they were getting calls on their cell phones. So everybody is a target. I mean, I get them myself. I mean, I think I have won everything from an automobile, television, to burial plots. And what I simply do is just hang up the phone.
So you mean people are calling and saying that you won stuff, and that's a more or less a fraudulent call too?
Well, for example, there's the lottery scam where they will call and say you won X amount of dollars. But in order to receive the check, you need to send a certain amount of money for processing. And so, yes, that is in fact a scam.
Wow. So I know you talked a little bit about some of the tips. What are some of the other tips? I know this book that you have is wonderful, the AARP Watchdog Alert Handbook, but it gives a lot of information. What are some of the things that we can do to protect ourselves?
Well, one of the things that you can do to protect yourself is take a look at the number, if you have caller ID, and just see where their number's coming from. Another thing, of course, as I've stated, do not give out identifying information like your bank account number, your social security number, your date of birth to folk that are calling trying to get this information. For folk that are on Medicare, be careful about how you use your Medicare number, because people are getting that number and using it in a fraudulent way. So it's just very necessary for folk to be alert.
Yeah, and be vigilant on protecting their information. Now, where can people get more information about AARP's fraud protection program?
They can go to our website, aarp.org/Fraud Watch Network. Okay. I'll say that again.
All right.
aarp.org/Fraud Network. They can go there and they can get excellent information on the different kinds of frauds and scams and things that they can do to protect themselves.
Well, Wallace, as always, you come with great information for our viewers, and we really thank you for what you're doing and what AARP is doing to protect against fraud. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be here, and always I appreciate the work that you do with us at AARP as our Regional Volunteer Director.
I'm loving it, loving every minute of it. Well, listen, stay with us, and we'll be right back.
We all have something neatly tucked away in the back of our mind. A secret hope. That thing we've always wanted to do. It's not about having dreams. It's about reaching them. An ally for real possibilities. AARP. Find tools and direction at aarp.org/possibilities.
Welcome back. We're joined today by Mike Goodwin, who is a comedian and featured speaker for the upcoming Amara Health Empowerment Tour. And Mike, you are a Christian comedian.
Yes.
And quite heavily booked.
Yes.
So what attracted you to Christian comedy?
Well, it represents who I am. I think some of the most profound comedy is when people share out of their own experience. That's the comedy that folks relate to.
Right.
That's the comedy that they connect with, when you can see yourself in the comedian's act. So I'm a Christian. I live a life that's pleasing to God. So my comedy kind of comes out of that vein.
Okay, so what are your audiences like? Are they primarily churches?
Yeah, I do a lot of churches. I do a lot of clubs, but I do the same act.
Really, at the club?
In the club. Do the same act.
There's a good joke about that.
No, like the 2-drink minimum club. Yeah.
2-drink minimum club.
Because your boyfriend out in the parking lot club. Yeah, I'm just saying.
You gotta take Christianity everywhere.
Take it anywhere. And funny is funny. So, some of the same topics, they translate well in the club, Folks like hearing about church in the club sometimes.
Some of the folks be in the club Saturday night.
Yeah. Sunday morning.
That's exactly right. About what it is.
So where do you see your comedy routine going in the next 3 or 5 years?
In the next 3, I want to become nationally known. I want to get in front of bigger audiences and get some TV and movie credits. Something that gets more notoriety. Because what happens in comedy, you have an act, but you need people to come and buy tickets to see your act. Just because you're funny and that you perform well, that doesn't mean that folks are going to automatically come out and see you. So I want to increase my exposure to a broader base so that more folks will come and be attracted to my show when I'm in their time.
Now, do you think that's a challenge, when you think about modern day comedians and even some old school folks like Eddie Murphy and way back, it's a lot of profanity and adult themes, or a lot of jokes maybe at the expense of others.
Yeah, comedy. I'm sorry.
How do you compete with that?
Well, in comedy, there's pain. So out of pain, the same thing will make you cry, will make you laugh. Well, the way that I create my comedy, I don't have any malice intent. So funny is funny, and I think that we can find a way to laugh at a number of things without attacking people, without making someone the butt of the joke. Often I'm the butt of the joke. So if you carry it yourself, most folks will be fine. Yeah. Now what does happen if you out in the audience, messing with me, like at the zoo. When you go to the zoo, you just look at the animals. Don't stick your hand in the cage. You stick your hand in the cage, I can't be held responsible for what you're doing. So if you at my show, hey, look at me, comedian, I got to come and deal with that. So, but typically, I have enough to talk about. I got enough material, so I don't mess with people.
So you might get a few hecklers in the
every now and then. You do, but you let them know, hey, I don't cuss, but you still want to leave me alone.
You are not to be messed with.
What you're not gonna do.
Well, it's obvious that you really love what you do.
Yes.
Why do you do it? I mean,
to pay bills.
To pay
Mortgage. Utility bill. Life insurance. School payments.
Okay. All right. I set myself up.
No, but that I've gotten to the place where I'm a full-time comedian, because my dad does not think I have a job. He think I'm out here just messing around. So I'm really a gainfully employed comedian, and so I figured out how to make my passion, my career.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's the key.
And that's
entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's
really.
Entrepreneurship.
Well, thank you so much for being with us
Thank
today.
y'all for having me.
Well, that completes our show today. We hope that you enjoyed it and that you learned something that both empowers and inspires you. And thanks for watching the 7th season. This has been 7 beautiful years with you as our audience. Until the next time, peace. And blessings.